Hello, students. Welcome to this another discussion video on the topic property, plant, and equipment. At the end of this lesson, the student should be able to identify the assets classified as PPE, enumerate the different ways of acquiring PPE, and most importantly, determine the cost of PPE on initial measurement. So first, let's have the definition. Now, what is this property, plant, and equipment? So as defined, property, plant, and equipment are tangible assets that are held for use in production or supply of goods and services, for rental to others or for administrative purposes, and are expected to be used during more than one period. So based on this definition, we have three essential characteristics of a property, plant, and equipment. So we term it as PPE. No? Um, Firstly, property, plant, and equipment is a tangible asset, no? Or are tangible assets. When we say tangible, it means that meron siyang physical substance. So mahahawakan mo, nakikita mo. No? So that is PPE. Another thing is that PPE are used in business. So may that be in the production of goods and services, no, pwede rin for rental purposes or for administrative purposes. Like for example, merong building tapos ginawang office na ng entity. So we can classify those property plant or those assets, those type of assets as property, plant, and equipment. Another is that eto no, the duration when you're going to use it. So pag PPE, it is expected na magagamit mo siya for more than 1 year. No, since magagamit siya for more than 1 year, usually PPE also would involve a large no na amount of money. So here are the examples of property, plant, and equipment. So we have here land. So we are familiar with land. Another is land improvements. So land improvements, like for example, you have spent for landscaping, for example. So this will be considered as land improvements. So building, we know that, no? So familiar lang tayo sa building. Another is machinery. So in case of mga shipping lines or mga shipping companies, for example, like I don't know if you're familiar with Cebu ferries, no? Yung mga ganun. Hindi tayo masyadong familiar with mga barko because dito sa atin hindi wala tayong ano no seaport na pang public na transport. Another is aircraft. So in the case, for example, of PAL or Cebu Pacific, so of course they're mga airplane, no? So yung mga aircraft nila. So next is the motor vehicles. So yung mga sasakyan, no, we consider them as property, plant, and equipment. Of course, if we use them in the operation. So posibleng um, ginawang delivery vehicle, for example, no? So, or baka if that is, or if the entity is a bank, so possibly na yung mga sakyan, for example, na ginagamit ng mga managers no, para mag-market, for example, ng mga loans or mga deposits. Then we have furniture and fixtures, and then office equipment, itong patterns, mga molds and dies. So most probably this will be more applicable for mga manufacturing concern like gamit nila in the production of goods and or goods, no? If that is for a manufacturing concern. Then we have tools. So we can consider them also as property, plant, and equipment, especially if the amount is malaki din, no? And then, the last one would be the bearer plants. So, itong bearer plants class, say for example, yung coconut tree. So, these are bearer plants. So, before, itong mga bearer plants na to are accounted under PES 41, no, yung biological assets. But then, um, there was a change there was a change in the standard, and it is now classified here in PAS number 16, no, which is all about the property, plant, and equipment. So, for example, meron kang coconut farm ba or um, mga puno ng mangga of course, mga fruit bearings man yan sila. So, since hindi naman one time, no, na magbubunga ang mangga, for example, or yung mga coconut trees, then this particular fruit bearing trees are considered ito na maka-classify siya as bearer plants, which is to be accounted under property, plant, and equipment. Okay? So next naman is, let us know kung kailan ba natin dapat i-recognize yung property, plant, and equipment. So based on the standard, ang sabi niya dito, no, an item of property, plant, and equipment shall be recognized as an asset when, unang-una, it is probable that future economic benefits associated with the asset will flow to the entity. And then pangalawa, the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. So if you can still recall, these are actually the basic, no, na recognition criteria for us to record or recognize na assets in our books. So yung probable ang future economic benefits, tsaka mame-measure mo reliably yung cost. So pag present itong dalawang to, then we can recognize. So when you say recognize, we can include in our records, no? We have to record this particular asset. Okay. This is a special topic here. So this is a special discussion about what do we do with spare parts in servicing equipment. So spare parts, so usually 'di ba pag spare parts yan, naka-standby lang yan sila. And then magagamit lang kapag nasira na, meron nasira na part. So pang-replace natin. So usually these are carried no, as inventory. So hindi siya dito sa property, plant, and equipment, no, generally speaking. And then you just recognize them as an expense when they are consumed already. So most probably ang mangyayari ay say for example, you have this initial amount na you recognize 50,000 worth of the spare parts. Tapos, at the end of the accounting period, so from 50,000, so you have determined that the existing na lang amounts to 40,000. So, ibig sabihin yung 10,000 ay dapat i-recognize natin as expense. However, no, meron siyang sinasabi dito. Again, this is general, no? Ito siya, recognize siya as inventory and then mag-expense ka lang kapag na-consume na. So usually you can determine how much is the expense when you compare your beginning inventory and your ending inventory, when you do the physical count. Now, for major spare parts and standby equipment, so they may qualify as PPE. So kailan yun, no? Kailan yun mangyayari? When the entity expects to use them during more than one period. So if yung spare part na yun, no, say for example, na makaka-increase siya ng life ng asset, on that particular asset, then that particular spare part may be considered as your property, plant, and equipment. So, pwede siyang ma-qualify as PPE as long as present itong condition na to na magagamit mo ito for more than one period. So, say for example, pag sinabi itong major spare parts, say, sa sasakyan, for example, na if you're going to replace, for example, the makina no, of the sasakyan, then kasi major yan, no? So, malaki yung amount na magagastos mo dyan. So, therefore, we can capitalize no, such cost incurred na i-capitalize natin siya as property, plant, and equipment. So there is actually a specific discussion also about that, no? Regarding sa mga subsequent na cost incurred, na sa mga subsequent cost na you will incur after the initial measurement. Okay, so next is ito na no yung ating major na topic in this particular chapter na punta tayo sa measurement. How do we assign amount? No? How do we measure? How do we value? No? How do we give or how do we determine the value of the property, plant, and equipment that we're going to recognize in our books? So as we know that there are two, no? Two periods kung kailan tayo magbe-measure ng ating asset. So one is of course yung sinatawag natin na initial measurement, and then pangalawa is yung sinasabi natin subsequent measurement. So yung initial measurement, actually ito yung pinaka-topic ng chapter na ito. Why? Because we want to know at what amount pa natin dapat i-record ang ating property, plant, and equipment on the initial recognition or on the date of the initial recognition. Ito naman subsequent. So that is how do we measure our asset after we have recognized it no, initially. So usually subsequent measurement, nandun na yan sa mga end of the reporting period, na yung mga cut-off or mga reporting dates natin. So yun yung mga subsequent na measurement. So nasa record mo na yung asset, tapos at the end of the accounting period, you're going to measure, no, you're going to measure your asset. In this case, the property, plant, and equipment. Okay? So going back, no, paano ba natin i-measure initially ang ating property, plant, and equipment? So as mentioned here, the standard is very straightforward na that sabi niya, pag mag-assign tayo ng amount sa ating property, plant, and equipment, dapat you are going to measure it at cost. So, at cost lang, no? Kung titingnan natin, ay at cost lang naman pala, no? But then take note class that itong cost na to may vary, no? Depending on how you acquired the property, plant, and equipment. So, ito yung pinaka-topic natin in this particular chapter, no? Kung saan we have to learn kung ano ba ang i-consider natin na cost depende sa way no or manner ng pag-acquire natin ng property, plant, and equipment. But basically, no, kapag initial measurement, you're going to measure your PPE at cost. Now, sa subsequent measurement naman, pwede kang mamili, no? So, one is yung tinatawag na cost model, and then the other one is revaluation model. So, meaning either sa kanilang dalawa. So, pwede kang gumamit ng cost model or pwede naman na revaluation model. So, yung cost model actually, yun yung ating inadapt no, in the previous accounting natin. Like for example, di ba ang ginawa natin sa ACC 111 is that, or yung sa first ninyo na accounting is that, yung cost natin, i-reduce natin siya by accumulated depreciation na to get your net book value or yung tinatawag natin na carrying amount. So, yan yung cost model. The other one, yung revaluation model naman, this is a topic also, no? Which will be discussed in the future or in the next na mga chapters or the next na mga topics. Okay? So for now, we will just concentrate on initial measurement. Okay? So next tayo, ito, no? Since sabi naman natin na in the initial recognition of your PPE, you have to measure it at cost. So we have here, ano ba yung mga elements ng cost? Ano ba yung mga kasama, no, as part of the cost? So first is, of course, your purchase price. So this purchase price, of course, that includes mga import duties and mga non-refundable na mga taxes. So after deducting, pag meron mang trade discounts or mga rebates. So that is one of the elements of cost, so the purchase price. Another is yung mga directly attributable cost. So ano itong mga directly attributable cost na ito? So pag sinabi mong directly attributable cost class, these are the costs that you incurred, no? In bringing the asset, no, to the location and condition necessary for it to be capable of operating in the manner intended by the management. So meaning, lahat ng mga gastos mo para maging ready yung property, plant, and equipment na yun sa kung ano man ang intention ng management na gawin sa kanya, no? As a PPE. So dapat you have to capitalize that. So the directly attributable cost includes first the cost. No, these are some examples of directly attributable cost. So the cost of employee benefits arising directly from the acquisition of PPE. See, for example, ang itong asset na to or itong PPE na to ay very hazardous, for example. So, operating such machine para makompensate naman yung ating empleyado. So, posible i-increasean ang kanyang rate or baka meron siyang hazard pay. So, yan, no, that will form part of the cost of. So, ayun, no, if ever na meron pang additional cost no, sa pagbili ng PPE na yun, then related to the employee benefits, then that will become capitalizable. So another is the cost of site preparation. So pag sinabi natin site preparation, meaning baka for example, no, if mag-build ka or magko-construct ka ng building, so the cost of preparing the site will also form part of the cost of the asset. So magiging capitalizable siya. Next would be the initial delivery and handling cost. So yun yung mga freight charges, no? Mga handling cost. So kasama na yan sa directly attributable costs which are capitalizable. Then of course the installation and assembly cost. So pag install mo ng machine, for example, or ng equipment, of course magagastos ka niyan. Like yung mga wiring class, no? For example. So that also becomes capitalizable. So part na siya ng directly attributable cost. And then kung meron mga professional fees, like for example, no, you hired consultants in before purchasing the machine, for example, or the equipment, para meron kang better understanding of what's best or what's the best fit, no, na machine para sa company nyo. So, magbabayad ka for professional fees. For example, so yan, na part siya ng capitalizable cost. Then lastly, the cost of testing whether the asset is functioning properly. So just take note here that you're still testing whether the asset will function na as you have intended it to function. Now, um, it's a different story pag sinabi mo naka-function na ang asset. No? Kasi since tapos na siyang ma-establish yung kanyang condition na magagamit na siya. So after that, hindi na siya capitalizable. So dito, tinetest mo pa lang if the asset is functioning properly. So any cost that you incurred, no, in relation to the testing can still be considered as directly attributable cost. So these are the costs which are not capitalizable. So most probably pag naka-incur ng mga ganitong cost ay i-expense natin immediately, no? These are expensed outright. So first is the cost of opening the facility. So baka may nagpa-party, no? So that one, cost of that one is to be expensed outright. Hindi yan kasama sa ating capitalizable cost. Another is the cost of introducing a new product or service. So which includes the advertising and promotion. So hindi na talaga yan kasama, no? Kasi advertising na yan, no, expense. So that will be expense outright na. So na-establish mo na yung location and condition na ready na for use ang yung asset or yung machine mo. So ito nga, no, nag-introduce ka na ng product sa market. So that one is not capitalizable. Another is the cost of conducting business in a new location or with a new class of customer, including the cost of staff training. So again, based on the premise that tapos mo namang na-establish, no, or hindi na siya related doon sa pag-establish or pag-prepare ng PPE para maging ready siya, no, as intended by the management. So kaya hindi siya capitalizable. Also, this one, administration and other general overhead costs. So for sure, hindi yan capitalizable. Number 5 is ito, no, the cost incurred while an item capable of operating in the manner intended by management has yet to be brought into use or is operated at less than full capacity. So ito yung sinasabi ko na if ever, no, na-establish na natin or na-ready na natin yung ating PPE in the location and condition intended with the management. Kaso lang, hindi mo pa siya nagamit or hindi mo pa na fully utilized, no? Hindi pa siya na-utilize at full capacity. So any cost incurred in relation to that are not capitalizable. Next would be the initial operating losses. So yan, no? So operations naman yan, hindi na or wala nang hindi na yan siya related sa PPE. And then lastly, the cost of relocating or reorganizing part or all of the entity's operation. So hindi na rin natin pwedeng ipahid yan sa ating PPE or i-capitalize yan sa PPE. So hindi siya pwedeng i-capitalize sa PPE. Okay, so dito tayo sa acquisition of property. So ito na yung pinaka-core ng ating discussion. So here, nandito yung listahan kung how do we acquire ba, no? In what way na we can acquire property, plant, and equipment. So ito yung mga manner, no? Ito yung mga ways of acquiring property, plant, and equipment. So first is the cash basis. Second is yung on account siya, which is subject to cash discount. Pwedeng installment basis. Pwedeng na-acquire ba yung property by issuance of share capital, na nag-issue ka ng shares or nag-issue ka ng bonds or exchange, no? Or baka naman dinonate or merong government grant. And then lastly, what if nag-construct ka, na? Parang mga self-construct na asset. So these are the different ways of acquiring property. Now, just take note that for each way here, no, ang ating gustong i-establish is that magkano bang i-consider natin na cost? Kasi 'di ba sabi natin, at initial recognition, your property, plant, and equipment should be measured at cost. Now, iba't iba ang paraan, no, or iba't iba yung basis natin sa cost. Depende sa way of acquiring the property. So, yun yung ating pag-aaralan in this particular topic, no? So, ano bang i-consider the cost pag cash basis? Ano bang i-consider the cost pag on account, no? Or pag installment basis? So, that will be the core of our discussion. Also, class, no? Of this 9 ways of acquiring PPE, itong government grant is not included in my discussion kasi this is a separate or there's a separate chapter for this, no? Para ma-emphasize lang siya. So, hindi lang muna kasama sa discussion yung government grant. Okay, so unang-una yung cash basis, no? So, gusto nating ma-establish magkano ba ang cost, no? Kapag cash basis. So, pag cash basis class, the cost is equal to the cash price equivalent at the recognition date. So, take note, no? Cash price equivalent, yung cost natin. So, the cost includes the cash paid plus directly attributable costs such as freight, installation costs, and other costs necessary in bringing the asset to the location and condition for the intended use. No? So, yun yung sa cash basis. Okay, so ang sinasabi dito, if the asset or the PP is acquired in a basket price or at a basket price, you have to allocate the basket price based on the fair value. So if you can still recall, yung sa relative sales price method sa inventory na topic, no, the same lang ating gagawin dito. So I have here a sample. So for example here, the land and building are acquired at a single cost of 5.5 billion. So at the time of acquisition, the land has a fair value of 1 million and the building 4 million. So how do we determine the cost of the land and building? So just take note na kapag naka-basket price yan, hindi pwedeng hindi mo siya i-breakdown or hindi mo siya i-allocate. So we have to allocate it. And then, ang pag-allocate natin ay based dito sa fair value ng mga assets. So this is the solution for this problem. So ito. So yung gagawin lang natin is kunin natin yung mga fair value ng land tsaka ng building. So you have 1 million for the land, 4 million for the building. So based on our problem. So if you're going to add the fair value of the land and the fair value of the building, you will get 5 million. So out of this fair value, you formulate a fraction. So ito yung fraction natin. So that is 1 over 5 or 1 million over 5 million and 4 over 5 or 4 million over 5 million. So if you have this fraction na, we will be multiplying the fraction with your single cost or your lump sum or your basket price na 5.5 million. So in this case, that's 1 over 5 times 5.5 million. So it will give us 1.1 million. So ibig sabihin, itong ating land, meron siyang allocated amount na 1.1 million. Whereas sa building, that will be 4 over 5 times 5.5 million. So meron tayong 4,400,000. So, ibig sabihin, pag mag-record tayo ng transaction na ito, magde-debit ako ng land at 1,100,000. Magde-debit ako ng building at 4.4 million and magke-credit ako ng cash na 5.5 million. So, ito siya, you also have to you also have to apply yung sinatawag natin na relative sales price method, no? We're going to use the fair value of the land and the building in order to allocate, no, the single price. So we have here the single price is 5.4 million. Okay? So, just take note of this one. So, sabi niya, 5.4 million ang basket price or ang lump sum price. And that 5.4 million, that includes appraiser's fee of 50,000. Now, magtatanong tayo, yung 50,000 ba na appraiser's fee ay tama lang na isama natin dito sa 5.4 million? So, yun bang 50,000 is considered as capitalizable? So, can we consider this as directly attributable cost? So, the answer is yes. So, ibig sabihin, yung 5.4 million na ito, sakto na yan, no? Yan na yung ating gagamitin or yan na yung amount na i-allocate natin kay land tsaka kay building. Okay? So, paano again natin i-allocate yung 5.4 million? So, based on the fair market value or the fair value of your land and your building. So, in this case, ang sabi dito, di ba, the current appraised value is 2 million for the land and 3 million for the building. Tapos, meron din siya binigay na original cost, which is 1.4 million for the land and 2.8 for the building. So the question is, what is the initial measurement of the land? So again, there are two things that you have to apply here. There's two concepts that you have to apply here. One is the idea of capitalizable cost. Like for example, here, the 50,000 appraiser's fee, you have to determine whether it is capitalizable or not. If it is capitalizable, then it would be okay, no? Because wala ka nang gagawin, you will just pick up 5.4 as your basket price. No? Pero pag na-determine natin na yung cost or yung amount na na-include in this basket price is not capitalizable, then what you have to do is you have to deduct na 50,000 from 5.4 million. Pero again, in this case, ano naman, no? Hindi naman natin or itong 50,000 na to ay capitalizable naman. So therefore, 5.4 million talaga ang ating pagbabasehan. Okay? So the next concept that you have to apply also in this problem is yung idea ng allocation na kapag meron tayong basket price or lump sum price. And ang gagamitin natin na mga figures is yung mga fair value. So in this case, yung appraised value yung gagamitin natin. How do we allocate? So this will be your, So this will be your computations. So for your land, the fair value is 2 million here. And then for the building, the fair value is 3 million. So based on these figures here, you formulate a fraction. No? So that's 2 over 5. You multiply it by the basket price na 5.4 million. So you'll have 2,160,000 for the land and 3,240,000 for the building. So most probably the answer for this problem is letter D, no? 2,160,000. So punta naman tayo sa second way of acquiring your property, plant, and equipment. So what if on account? No? So pag on account siya, in short, utang, no? Utang siya. Pag on account siya, no? Inutang mo muna yung iyong property na binili or no, yung in-acquire mo na property. So the cost is equal to the invoice price minus discount whether taken or not. So ito naman yung pagbabasehan natin ng cost. Na kapag on account, take note class na ang cost is equal to the invoice price. Reduce natin siya by the discount. And ito, no? Take note that whether the discount is taken or not, still it will be deducted from the cost of your asset, no, of your property. Okay, now I hope that is clear. So if discount is not taken, so what if, no, paano yan, no? Hindi naman in-avail yung discount. So take note, pag hindi in-avail yung discount class, it will be charged to purchase discount lost account, which is an expense account. So parang additional burden siya, no, ng management or ng company. Bakit? Kasi of course, binigyan ka na ng discount tapos hindi mo pa siya in-avail. No? So parang it's, it's not a wise decision not to take or just to forgo discount. No? Although in financial management, there's also a way of weighing things out kung dapat ba natin i-avail ang discount or hindi. No? Pero most probably, or generally speaking, pag may discount, no, it will be advantageous on the part of the entity kung i-avail nila, no, yung discount. So kaya ganito, no, pag nag-acquire ka ng property tapos finorgo mo lang ang discount, so you will also suffer because you will be reporting additional expense. Okay, so we have here a sample problem. Acquired machinery on account. No? So tanggalin na lang yung 4. So on account yan, no? Tanggalin na lang natin ito. So the machinery was priced at 800,000 and a 5% cash discount is allowed. So siguro, of course, if paid within the discount period. No? How much is the cost of the machinery? So kung babalikan natin yung concept, ang sabi niya, whether the discount is taken or not, the cost of your machine or your asset acquired should be reduced by the cash discount offered. So how much will be the cost of the machinery? So that will be the purchase price of 800,000 minus the cash discount of 5%. The 5% of 800,000 is 40,000. So therefore, the cost of the machine, no, on initial recognition is 760,000. So this is the amount that you're going to record. Okay, so next is, ito yung ating entry, no? Ito yung ating journal entry. So please be reminded also, no? You can still recall, parang ito na discuss na natin na methods of recording purchases doon sa ating topic na inventory. The same is true or the same would apply to PPE. No, pwede kang gumamit ng gross method, pwede kang gumamit ng net method. Now, pag gross method ang ginamit, no, if you're going to journalize the problem, no, na previously at yung present kanina, ito, if you're going to journalize this, under the gross method, ito yung entries natin. No? So, to record the acquisition of the machinery, so you just debit machinery at 800,000, credit accounts payable at 800,000. Now, if the payment was made within the discount period, so ito yung magiging itsura ng entry mo, no? You just debit accounts payable, no? Since yun yung amount na credit mo before. So you just debit accounts payable at 800,000. Cash natin na babayaran ay 760,000 na lang. And then yung difference ng accounts payable tsaka nung binayad mo ng cash, or should I say yung discount, no, na na-avail mo, i-reduce yun sa amount ng machinery. So if you're going to look at this, ang ating machinery initially merong 800,000, naka-debit yan. So naka-credit tayo ng 40,000. So yung net amount ng machinery na nireport natin ay 760,000 lang talaga. Net already of the discount. Now, what if hindi na-avail yung cash discount? No? Nagbayad siya beyond the discount period na. So, ito yung entry naman natin. No? Debit tayo ng accounts payable, 800,000. Tapos, since hindi tayo nag-avail ng discount, magde-debit tayo ng purchase discount loss na 40,000. And then, credit tayo ng cash na 800,000 kasi yun yung mga amount na ating kinash out. Tapos machinery no, na 40,000 pa rin credit. So that represents your cash discount na hindi mo inavail. No? So whether inavail mo yung discount or hindi, still the cost of your machine will be reduced by your cash discount which was not availed or inavail man siya. Okay? So the other method is yung net method. So, as compared here, di ba, kasi kaya tawag sa kanya ay net method kasi when you initially recognize your machinery, hindi mo na ni-recognize ang cash discount. So, dito, what you recorded is nang-debit ka na ng machinery na 760,000, credit ka ng accounts payable, 760,000. That is, again, net already of the cash discount. Now, kapag nakabayad within the discount period, so walang problema. You just debit accounts payable at 760, credit cash at 760. Pag hindi ka naman nakabayad within the discount period, so ito na yung magiging entry natin. So, debit tayo ng accounts payable at 760,000 kasi yun yung na-set up natin na liability. Debit tayo ng cash purchase discount loss na 40,000. Of course, na representing the amount na hindi natin inavail. And then credit cash at 800,000. So ganito yung magiging itsura ng iyong entries kapag net method at hindi inavail ang cash discount. So that is on account, no? Okay, so dito na tayo sa pangatlo. Paano naman pag in-acquire mo yung property on installment basis or kung deferred ang payment. No? Yung kanina, yung on account, utang nga siya, pero kaya lang, limited lang yung credit period. So siguro, mga 15 days, no? Or 30 days, depending on the agreement of or the allowance na given by the supplier. But this time, ito siyang number 3, on installment basis or deferred payment. So kasi installment siya, most probably medyo ano siya, no, matagal-tagal din siyang ma-fully paid. No? So matagal siyang ma-fully paid. So again, initially sabi natin property, plant and equipment should be measured at cost. So dito sa installment basis, ano kaya yung i-report natin or i-consider natin as cost of your property, no? As our basis for the initial measurement. So ang sabi, under the installment basis, ang cost daw is equal to the cash price equivalent. Di ba class, no? Pag installment, say for example, sa appliance center, no? Iba yung presyo pag spot cash. Na pag spot cash yan, most probably mas mura as compared to aabutin kapag in-installment mo pagbayad. So yung cash price equivalent, no, yung i-consider natin na cost kasi wala pa yung mga implied na interest, no? Wala pa yung consideration or wala pa siyang patong na interest, no? Yung again implied interest. So if there's no cash price equivalent, so what if hindi given, no, or hindi available yung cash price equivalent? So you have this alternative. Now you can determine the cost by computing the present value because kapag walang cash equivalent or walang cash price equivalent, the cost is just equal to its present value. So in short, present value of all payments na that you'll be making because of this particular acquisition. Okay, meron tayong sample problem dito na merong cash price equivalent. So on August 1, 2012, Braga Ducio Company purchased a new machine on a deferred payment basis. In short installment. A down payment of 100,000 was made and if 4 monthly installments of 250,000 each are to be made beginning on September 1, 2012. So the cash price equivalent of the machine was 950,000. So the entity incurred and paid installation costs amounting to 30,000. What amount should be capitalized as cost of the machine? So if you're going to apply what was presented in the previous slide, so sabi niya, di ba, pag merong cash price equivalent, yun na yung pagbabasehan mo sa cost as of initial recognition. So in this case, in this particular problem, binigay sa atin yung cash price equivalent na 950,000. Just be careful lang class, no? Kasi hindi pa yan yung answer, no? Yung 950,000 na yan. Bakit, no? Well, it's true that kapag installment, ang basis natin is yung cash price equivalent. Take note that in this problem, there are also directly attributable cost incurred. And do not forget to include no, the directly attributable costs. Kasi these are capitalizable cost. No, so yung again, yung question niya, magkano na yung amount na dapat i-capitalize as cost of the machine. So in this case, that will be our 950,000 na cash price equivalent plus the installation cost of 30,000. So that's a total of 980,000. So yung letter D ang ating answer dyan. Okay. Now, this is the entry, no? Ito yung entry natin in relation to the previous na problem. So, pag in-entryhan natin yun, when we purchase the machinery, ito yung entry natin, yung acquisition. So, debit tayo ng machinery at 980,000. So, again, that's the cash price equivalent of 950 plus the installation cost of 30,000. So, that's a total of 980,000. So, magde-debit tayo ng discount on notes payable amounting to 150,000. Notes payable of 1 million. So, saan ba galing yung 1 million na notes payable na yan? So, that is actually, di ba ang sabi sa problem na, apat daw na monthly installment of 250,000 each. So, 250,000 times 4, so that is 1 million. So, yun yung ating notes payable. Etong cash, saan galing yung cash na 130,000? So, yung cash na 130,000 is galing sa down payment na 100,000 and aside from the down payment na 100,000, there's also the cost incurred na in relation to installation cost. So, that's why 130,000 yan. Okay, so the next entry here is the payment or the first installment payment. So, debit lang tayo ng notes payable. Then, credit tayo ng cash na 250,000. The last entry is for the amortization of the discount on note payable. So, I hope you can still recall how we do this or how we did this in ACC 124. So, this is actually the outstanding balance method. So, we're in here, no? Nilista lang. Hindi pala dapat ito year, no? Parang month lang man yun. Month lang ba? So, month lang daw, no? 4 monthly installments. So, dapat first month, second month, and third month, and then fourth month. So, but again, ito sila mga outstanding balances ito. So, since nagbayad ng 250, so magiging 750 na lang at the beginning of the second year or second month. And so on and so forth. So, pagka third month, 500,000 na lang. Then lastly, pagka fourth month, magiging 250,000 na lang. So, after that, you are going to add all of them, no? Add all of the outstanding balances. So you'll have 2.5 million. So based on these amounts here, you formulate a fraction. So ito 100 over 250, 75 over 250, 50 over 250, 25 over 250. Now, to get this amortization here, etong fraction na to, you simply multiply it by your discount on note payable balance. So in this case, you have 150,000. So for the first month, you'll have 60,000. For the second month, you'll have 45. For the third month, you have 30,000. And lastly, for the fourth month, you'll have 15,000. So that's how you account no, your transaction. If in case the asset or the property is acquired on installment and meron kang cash price equivalent. Okay? Now, what if walang cash price equivalent? Ito yung ating challenge, no? Kasi ang sabi kanina, pag walang cash price equivalent, then there is a need for us to compute for the present value of all payments. Okay? So, compute the present value of all payments. So, in this particular sample problem, we have character company, nag-purchase siya ng equipment. So, nagbigay siya ng down payment, 400,000. Tapos, nag-issue siya ng note payable worth 1.8 million. So, a payment of 600,000 is to be made at the end of each year for 3 years. No? So, the applicable rate of interest is 8%. So, the present value of an ordinary annuity of 1 is 8 for 8% for 3 periods is 2.58. Shipping charge for the equipment of 200,000 and installation cost of 350,000 were incurred. So what is the capitalized cost of the equipment? So to answer that, we have this computation here. So unang-una, what you're going to do is i-compute muna natin yung present value of all payments. So magkano ba ang present value ng all payments? So first is meron tayong down payment na 400,000. Again, we just lift these amounts from the problem. No? And then the present value of the note payable. Kasi sabi, magbabayad tayo ng 600,000 every year. No? Uniform yun, 600,000 every year. So binigyan na tayo ng present value factor na 2.58. So you have 1,548,000. So the cost of the machinery before or the equipment na before directly attributable cost na is 1,948,000. So kung idagdag natin yung shipping charge at yung installation cost, it will tally to 2,498,000. Okay? So to address the question or the problem here, so our answer would be 2,498,000 letter D. So balikan lang natin yung computation na to. So paano naman ang amortization? So since this is yung walang cash price equivalent and we tried to compute for the present value of all payments. So ang gagawin natin, no, apply natin yung effective interest method of amortization, no, based sa na-discuss natin in the previous na mga topics sa ACC 124. Okay? So, how do we do this? No? Yung amortization ng discount on note payable. So, first is, mag-start tayo with the present value of the note. So, ito, na-compute natin by multiplying 600,000 by 2.58. So, your first column here, second column here is for the payment. So, 3 beses lang siya bababayad, 600,000 each year. So, yung interest na to, paano na siya na-compute? That is your previous present value or carrying amount, multiply lang natin by the discount or the applicable interest rate. In this case, that's 8%. So that's 1,548,000 times 8%. So yun yung 123,840. So yung principal, paano na-compute? So that is 600,000 minus 123,840 equals your principal. So after this, itong amount na to, what was applied to principal, i-deduct lang natin by or from the present value, the previous. So that's 1,548,000. Okay? So until that, pagka third year, of course, dapat ma-zero out na siya dito. And then, ano lang class, no? Kasi since last year na ito, dapat yung present value natin ay masi-zero out na din. So you just get the figures, no? Or parang i-balance lang natin na dapat ang ending na present value will be 0 na. Okay? So ito, binalik na lang or binaliktad na lang pag-compute. Since meron na akong principal dito na this amount, 557,587. So ang ginawa ko na lang para ma-compute natin ang interest ay dineduct na lang itong 557,587 from your payment of 600,000. So yan, meron pang interest na 42,413. For the entries, this will be the entries na of our sample problem. So the first entry is just recording the acquisition. So if you have noticed there, nag-debit siya ng machinery based on the total cost of the machine. So that includes already all of the directly attributable cost. And then your discount on note payable, we have initially computed that. Now comparing the note payable at principal amount compared to the present value of the note, which is 1,548,000 as computed. So meron tayong discount on note payable ng 252,000. Then credit natin notes payable 1.8 and then credit tayo ng cash na ng 950,000. So next entry is for the first acquisition, first installment payment. So nagbayad lang tayo ng notes payable and then credit tayo ng cash. Then the last one would be the amortization of your discount on note payable. So based lang tayo dito sa amortization table. So 123,840 pesos. Okay? Now, as to presentation, as to the classification and presentation and the face of our financial statements, so ito na yung magiging itsura niya, no? For the current liability, kasi di ba, usually this is at the end na of the first year. So pag end ng first year, ito yung makikita dapat na report. Current liability natin is yung mag-due na 600,000 by next year. And then we have to reduce that by our discount on note payable, no, applicable din for the second year. So dito lang tayo refer no sa ating amortization schedule. So dito ito yung ating for the second year. So dapat ang carrying amount ng ating current liability ay 514,253. Now, itong 600,000 na to, since makokolekta siya beyond na sa 12 months or after 12 months pa before or from the reporting date. So that is why it's already considered as non-current liability. So for that non-current liability, yun lang din, no? Ang basis natin is yung schedule na amortization sa dito. So ito siya na amount will become or will become our basis, no, for the carrying amount of our non-current liability. So which is 557,587, which nag-reconcile naman doon sa amortization schedule. So tapos na tayo sa installment. So proceed tayo dito sa next. Issuance of share capital naman. No? Paano naman ito? Mag-i-issue tayo ng share capital. So the cost here is measured at the fair value of the consideration received. Pag hindi available ang fair value ng asset na na-receive mo, ito yung ating pagbabasihan sa cost. So, pinakauna, yung fair value of the property that you receive. So, kung hindi yan available, refer ka sa fair value ng share capital. Pag wala pa talaga, refer ka na sa par value or stated value of the share. So, yan yung ating basis ng cost kapag issuance of share capital. Okay, so we have here a sample problem kay Binary Company, no? Land with the current market value of, purchased land with a current market value of 2.4 billion. The carrying amount of the land was 1,305,000. So in exchange for the land, the entity issued 20,000 ordinary shares with par value of 100, estimated market value of 140 per share. So the shares are not traded in an established stock exchange. So what amount should be recorded as cost of the land? So depende yan, no? There are 3 possible approaches. Pero given the problem actually, ang ating pagbabasihan talaga is yung fair value ng ating land na nabili. Okay, so for letter A, ito, this will be your entry kapag ang ginamit ay fair value of the land. So if the land is 2.4, no, your share capital will be credited at par. So that's 20,000 times 100. So that's 2 million. And then your share premium will be 400,000. Now, pag hindi naman available ang fair value ng assets, no, na na-receive natin, let us try to consider the fair value of the shares issued. In this case, the market value of the share is 140 pesos daw. No, yun yung ating pagbabasehan. So, your land will be valued at 20,000 shares times 140, say of 2.8 million. So, share capital is credited at par. So, that's 20,000 times 100. So, a total of 2 million. And then we have the share premium of 800,000. Now, lastly, what if wala ring fair value ng shares na issue? So, kung wala talaga, you just refer na lang to the par value of the shares issued. So, dito kung napapansin nyo, wala ka nang i-report a share premium. So, you just debit the land and then credit share capital. Okay, so another is the issuance of bonds. So, this is the 5th one. So, for the issuance of bonds, no, the cost is measured at fair value plus transaction costs that's directly attributable to the issuance of financial liability. So, still in order of priority, ito yung pagbabasihan ng, so una, the fair value of the bonds. Pangalawa, the fair value of the assets received. And pangatlo, the face value of the bonds. So, what if ito yung sample problem natin, no, na si Figaro Company, nag-acquire siya ng land by issuing 10% bonds payable with a face amount of 600,000. So at the time of acquisition, the fair value of the land is 800,000 and the bonds are trading at 102. So what is the initial cost of the land? So, ayun yung mga choices. Now, kung pagbabasehan natin, kasi diba given naman lahat, fair value tsaka yung sa face amount ng bonds. So, kung pagbabasehan natin, silang tatlo ay present naman, so of course, land should be measured at fair value of the bonds payable, which is 612,000. So, yun yung ating basis of our cost. Now, what if hindi available yung 612,000, no? Ay, paano ba natin kinumpute ang 612,000, no? So, 600,000 is computed as the face amount of the bond, 600,000. Multiply natin itong 102. Actually, pag bonds yan, ang ibig sabihin, that's 102% of the face value. So, if you're going to multiply 600,000 by 102%, you will get 612,000. So, that's why we are going to debit our land at 612,000. Kasi yan yung fair value of the bonds. And then, i-credit natin ang bonds payable at face amount and then credit premium on bonds payable at 12,000. Now, pag hindi present yung fair value ng bond, so the next thing is the fair value of the land, no? Yung asset na ating na-receive. So in this case, the fair value of the land is 800,000. So you are going to debit land at 800,000 and then credit bonds payable at 600,000 and then premium on bonds payable at 200,000. Now, kung wala talaga yung mga fair value na yan, so mag-base na lang tayo sa face amount ng bonds payable. So simply debit line at 600,000, the face amount of your bonds, credit bonds payable. Okay. Next, number 6, we have exchange, no? Ano naman ito ang exchange? So the cost of the cost of an item of PPA acquired in exchange for a non-monetary asset. So in short, hindi siya cash, no? Or a combination of monetary and non-monetary asset is measured at their value. However, the exchange is recognized at a carrying amount under the following circumstances. So, pag ito present, meaning you have to measure your PPE at carrying amount. So, first is if the exchange lacks commercial substance. And then number 2, the fair value of the asset given or the fair value option of the asset received is not reliably measured. So, kung present yung dalawang yan, then we have to measure our asset received based on the carrying amount. So ito yung ating guidelines as to the measurement if in case na there is an exchange and that exchange has commercial substance. So the cost, if that is the case, no, is equal to the following. If you are the payer, then the cost is equivalent to the fair value of the asset given plus any cash that you have paid. Whereas kung ikaw naman yung recipient, ang cost ng asset na na-acquire mo through exchange with commercial substance will be the fair value of the asset that you have given minus any cash received. So we have here a sample problem for the exchange with commercial substance. So here, A and B exchange equipment with the following details. So ito yung mga details ng equipment ni A, tsaka ito naman yung details ng equipment ni B. For A, ang cost ng equipment niya ay 1.6, accumulated depreciation ay 900,000, carrying amount is 700,000, and the fair value is 600,000. A paid to B, no, amount and amounting 200,000. So ito yung details ng equipment ni B na ang cost niya ay 2 million, the accumulated depreciation ay 1,350,000, carrying amount is 650,000, and the fair value is 800,000. So yung amount na binayad ni A, of course, no, yun yung amount na na-receive ni B. So the cash paid amounting to 200,000 made by A to B is the difference in fair value minus 600. So that's 800,000, the fair value of the asset of B minus the fair value of the asset of A. So that's 200,000. So to account for that, let's have here in the books of the payer. So unang-una, we have of course to determine muna kung magkano ba yung cost ng asset natin. So as what we have mentioned earlier, that the cost of the new asset of the payer is equivalent to the fair value of the asset he has given plus the cash payment. So in this case, we'll have 600,000 and add natin yung cash payment na 200,000. So the cost of the new asset will be 800,000. So since this is a commercial exchange, so it is possible to recognize gain or loss on exchange. So paano natin i-compute yung gain or loss on exchange? No? It is just a simple comparison of the fair value of the asset given. In this case, that's 600,000, and the carrying amount of your asset given up also. So you'll have 700,000 in this problem. So we have a loss on exchange amounting to 100,000, no, by the payer. So yung kay A. So to record this transaction, you just have to debit equipment new at the cost of the new asset, which is 800,000. So since i-recognize na natin yung equipment na old, dapat tanggalin natin lahat ng mga accounts na related sa kanya. So here, we debit accumulated depreciation at 900,000. We also debit loss on exchange na amounting to 100,000. And i-recognize natin, tanggalin natin yung old equipment natin. So we credit equipment old amounting to 1.6 million, that is its cost. And of course, yung binayad natin na 200,000 or binayad ni A na 200,000. So that is how you recognize the exchange, no, in the books of the payer. So again, kung tatanungin, kung MCQ problem ito, kung tatanungin kung magkano ang cost ng equipment na bago, then that would be 800,000. Now, in the books of the recipient, no, kay B naman, ganun din. No? The first thing that you have to do is to establish muna kung magkano ba ang cost ng bagong asset na na-acquire ni B or ni recipient. So, to do that, no, you just have to deduct, no, the cash payment received by B or the recipient from the fair value of the asset na give up niya. So in this case, ito yun, di ba? It's 800,000. So deduct natin yung cash payment. So the cost of the new asset will be 200,000. I mean 600,000. Now, to compute for the gain or loss on the exchange, ganun din. Now, you just compare the fair value of the asset given and its carrying amount. So in this case, ang fair value ng asset na give up ni B ay 800,000. Tapos yung carrying amount niya ay 650,000. So meron siyang gain on exchange amounting to 150,000. So to record that, you just debit equipment new at 600,000. Ito yung cost ng asset. You debit accumulated depreciation, that is to recognize all related accounts, no, sa equipment na old. And then we debit cash, no, for the amount that B received from E. And then credit equipment old at cost, which is 2 million, and credit gain exchange amounting to 150,000. Still under the exchange, no? This time naman, what if walang commercial substance, no? Yung sinasabi natin na walang change, no? Or walang significant changes in the cash flow of the entity related to this assets acquired through exchange. So kung walang commercial substance, ano ang ating basis ng cost? So sabi dito, dapat the cost of the asset that we acquired in an exchange without commercial substance shall be measured at carrying amount of the asset given up. So, hindi na tayo magbabase sa fair value but carrying amount na lang. So, with that, kasi carrying amount lang man ang iyong i-recognize, so there will be no gain or loss to be recognized na kapag walang commercial substance ang exchange. So, balikan natin yung ating sample problem kanina, except that this time walang commercial substance. So, kung walang commercial substance, na the same problem ito ha, tapos walang commercial substance. So, kung walang commercial substance, ang ating equipment na i-report ay equivalent na siya sa carrying amount of the asset that you have given, plus of course, any payment that you made. So in this case, carrying amount of the asset given up by A is 700,000 and then the cash payment is 200,000. So the total cost of your new asset is 900,000. Tapos tanggalin ang lahat na accounts na related sa equipment na old. So that includes the accumulated depreciation of 900,000. So credit tayo ng equipment old at 1.6. And then credit tayo ng cash. So wala tayong ni-report na gain or loss. So for the recipient naman na books, kay B for example, so dito ang kanyang debit na equipment ay 450,000. So saan galing ang 450,000? So yun din, no? Your asset given up or the carrying amount of the asset that you have given up is 650,000. So deduct lang natin yung cash payment na 200. So the cost of your new asset will be 450,000. So yun din, no? Tanggalin lang natin lahat ng mga accounts na related, no, to this particular asset na to be derecognized. So nag-debit tayo ng cash, no, for the cash that na-receive niya. And then credit equipment old, no, for the amount which is 2 million. Okay, so another is trade-in. So trade-in is also a form of exchange, no? This particular transaction involves a non-dealer acquiring the asset from a dealer. So it's a non-dealer transacting to a dealer. So usually this involves a significant amount of cash and therefore meron siyang commercial substance. So kung merong commercial substance, then the cost of the new asset is measured based on the following order of priority. So first is the fair value of the asset given plus cash payment. Pag trade-in value of the asset given plus cash payment. So yun yung ating basis for cost of your new asset. If acquired to this trade-in. So take note that for number 2, this is in effect the fair value of the asset received. So dito sa trade-in class, ang mangyayari is that meron tayong old equipment natin, for example, no, like sample sasakyan. And then we want to have a parang bago na model. Na, so yung gagawin natin para hindi naman matambay, no, or masayang yung old equipment natin, what we're going to do is we'll have, no, this trade-in transaction. So ang mangyayari ay yung ating old na car, for example, ay isa-surrender natin, no, in exchange of the new model. Pero of course, since old model naman yung ating binigay na equipment, bibigyan lang or mag-a-assign lang ng tinatawag na trade-in value yung dealer. No? And usually, of course, the amount of the trade-in value will be maliit lang, no? Or not that much because old model man yun sa atin na sasakyan, no? In the example. So, ang mangyayari, yung difference na lang ng presyo, no, ang presyo ng bagong model na sasakyan minus the trade-in value, no, as assigned by the dealer para sa old equipment, yun yung babayaran, no, ng cash ng entity. So yun, no, yun yung sa trade-in. So we have here an example, a problem, a sample problem. So here an entity traded an old equipment with a dealer for a newer model. So ito yung details ng old equipment. So yun yung cost niya, yung accumulated depreciation niya. So ang carrying amount niya ay 400, no? So that's 1.4 million minus 1 million. So 400,000 na lang ang kanyang carrying amount. So fair value is 350. Then trade-in value is 500,000. Yung bagong equipment naman, ito yung details, no? Yung list price niya ay 2 million. Whereas the trade-in value, as mentioned here, is 500,000. So kung ang presyo ng new equipment ay 2 million, tapos yung trade-in value ng old equipment natin is 500 lang, ibig sabihin magbabayad ang entity ng 1.5 million. No, surrender niya yung old na equipment niya plus payment of 1.5 million. So also as mentioned in the concept na in order of priority, no, ang pag-assign natin ng cost sa ating equipment na nakuha natin through trade-in. So sabi doon, first priority is yung fair value approach. So hindi naman available yung fair value, then pwede ka doon na sa second na option, which is the trade-in value approach. So looking at here, ito yung sa fair value approach natin. So since fair value approach, sabi doon, fair value of the asset given, so in this case, that's 350,000 na given siya dito. Plus your cash payment. So that will be the cost of your new asset. So 1,850,000. Yan. No? Now, when you record this, so ito na yung magiging journal entry mo. So with debit equipment, new at 1,850,000 as computed here, 350 plus 1.5. Then your debit accumulated depreciation, given yan, ito, 1 million. And then yung loss on exchange is computed here, no? Ito siya. So it's a comparison of the fair value of the asset given and the carrying amount of the asset. So that is 50,000 na loss on exchange. So i-debit natin yan. Tapos, of course, you have to credit the cost of your old equipment, which is 1.4 million. And of course, yung binayad natin na cash na 1.5 million. So if you're going to check this, of course, dapat magtali sila. So you have 2,900,000. So this is 2,900,000 also. So that's under fair value approach. Now, pag hindi naman available yung fair value ng ating equipment, or old equipment, so yung basis natin will be the trade-in value of the old equipment. So here, example, kung hindi given itong 350,000, so ito na lang 500,000 ang ating basis. So this will be the entry, no? Your debit, you have here the trade-in value of the asset is 500,000. Add natin yung cash payment na 1.5. So the cost of the new asset would be 2 million. So to get or to compute for the gain or loss on exchange, so we have here your trade-in value na 500,000 minus the carrying amount of 400,000. So there is no gain on exchange amounting to 100,000. So if you're going to record this, entry mo, magde-debit tayo ng equipment new na 2 million, accumulated depreciation na 1 million. So of course, wala na ito, no? Tapos mag-credit tayo ng old equipment or equipment old na 1.4. Credit tayo ng cash na 1.5. And then, credit tayo ng gain on exchange na 2 million. So bale, 100,000 pala, no? Gain on exchange credit na 100,000. So bale, on the debit side, equipment new 2 million, tapos accumulated depreciation na 1 million. So that's a total of 3 million. On the credit side naman, you have your equipment old na 1.4, cash na 1.5, so that's 2.9, plus gain on exchange na 100,000. So if you're going to tally that also has a total of 3 million, no? So kasi 2.9 plus 100,000. So that's 3 million din. So balance ang ating journal entry. So that's for the trade-in, no? Which is still part of exchange. So punta tayo sa number 7. So yung sa donation. Okay? So 'di ba it's common also na yung entity ay makaka-receive ng donation. So just take note that the asset that you receive from donation is to be recorded at fair value. Now, aside from that, aside from the debit, aside from our entry in our asset, we also have to be concerned on what amount should be credited. No? Ano ba yung amount na i-credit natin sa ating o saan ba natin siya i-credit no yung natanggap nating donation. So, depende class no, ang ating entry, ang ating credit no, ang ating credit side will depend on whether this donation ba is coming from shareholders or kung galing ba siya sa mga non-shareholders. So, pag shareholder yung nag-donate, so yung donate ay yung credit natin no, will be donated capital account. And another thing, expenses in relation to donation shall be charged to donated capital. So if you have mga expenses incurred in relation to the donation, like for example, mga payment ng registration fee or mga legal fees, no? It will be charged to donated capital. So, the reason is that itong mga expense na to will not increase no, or enhance the value of the asset. But of course, as we know na kapag directly attributable cost ang na-incur, it shall be capitalized. So that includes yung installation, for example, no? Yung pag-test or pag-install tsaka pag-test if running na ba siya, no? Or if you have spent some amount in order to bring the asset or the donated asset into the location and condition which the management intends it not to be, then they shall be capitalized. Okay? So, for non-shareholders naman, say for example, naka-receive tayo or naka-receive ang entity ng donation no, from non-shareholders. So, if that's the case, class, then take note that we are going to consider the donated assets as gifts or grants. So, since gifts or grants man siya, they shall be recorded at fair value when received or when receivable, no? And it becomes receivable. So, generally, these are considered as subsidies. So, therefore, we have to recognize it as income. Now, take note again that there are two parts here, or we're actually talking about two items here. One is the asset. So what am I going to do? How do I measure the asset now that I have received from this donation from a non-shareholder? So ang sinasabi dito that ang asset na na-receive natin should be recorded at fair value. So pag na-receive na natin or when it becomes receivable, we have to record it at fair value. Now, on the other side naman, yung sa credit side, ano naman ang gagawin natin? Saan natin siya i-credit? So sabi dito, since ma-consider daw itong donation from non-shareholders as subsidy, then you have to recognize it as income. So when they are not subsidies, for example, no, the offsetting credit is a liability account. So take note of that, no, na kung hindi naman siya subsidy, then we have to credit it to a liability account until such time that yung mga restrictions nila initially are already met. So pag na-comply na yung mga restrictions or na-comply na yung mga conditions na kinakailangan, then the liability is transferred to income. So kapag Non-shareholder yung nag-donate, ang endpoint talaga niya ay income siya na papunta. Okay, so we have here a sample before we proceed to that. So we have here a sample na a certain equipment was donated by a shareholder to the entity. So an independent appraisal of the equipment placed the fair value of 1 million and the residual value of 100,000. Attorney's fees and other expenses amounted to 25,000. So if the question here is how much should be reported as cost of your equipment, then the answer would simply be 1 million. Yung fair value ng asset na ating na-receive. What about the 25,000? No? So 25,000 class, 'di ba, this is an example of expenses incurred in connection with the donation. So such amount shall be charged to donated capital account. So ang mangyayari ganito, 'di ba? Pag receive natin sa equipment yung donated na asset, so most probably our entry there is a debit to example here, equipment, debit tayo ng equipment, tapos magki-credit tayo ng donated capital na 1 million. Now, when we incur the 25,000 attorney's fee and other legal expenses, so what's our entry? It will be a debit to your donated capital and a credit to cash. No? Kasi of course, nag-cash out ka man, no? 25,000. So, at in that note, so masasabi natin na ang value ng ating equipment as reported will be equivalent talaga to 1 million. And then if you'll be asked kung magkano na lang ang ating donated capital balance, no? With this incurrence of the attorney's fees and other expenses in relation to donation, so magiging 1 million minus 25,000. So magiging 975,000 na lang ang donated capital. Okay? So that's for donation. So proceed na tayo. Again, yung government grant will be discussed in a separate chapter, in a separate lesson. So proceed tayo dito, acquisition of property through construction. So what happened? No, instead na bumili tayo or instead na bumili ang entity, nag-construct na lang siya, no? Self-constructed na asset. So the cost of self-constructed asset shall include the following. So tatlo ito, no? First is the direct cost of materials. Second, the direct cost of labor. And the third one is of course the indirect cost or mga incremental overhead. So para tayo nagma-manufacturing concern ng mga elements of product cost. So direct cost ng materials, direct cost ng labor, tsaka manufacturing overhead. Okay? So we have here a sample problem. An asset is constructed and the following costs are incurred. So you have your materials, the total is 1.3. Ang normal daw ay 1 million. So therefore, of the 1.3 million, 300,000 is attributable to the constructed asset, while 1 million is for the finished goods, no, the inventory. For the labor naman na 1 million, ang total, normal niya is 800,000. So ibig sabihin 200,000 is the added amount na yun yung allocable or yun yung i-allocate natin sa constructed asset. For the manufacturing overhead, I know in your ACC 1, 2, 3, you are taught on how to allocate the manufacturing overhead. But in this particular problem, ano lang siya, na basic lang siya. So what we did is, inallocate lang ang manufacturing overhead based on the direct labor cost. So direct labor natin for the constructed asset is 200,000. For the finished goods, we have 800,000. So out of those balances, you formulate a fraction so that 2/10 times 900,000, it will give you 180,000. So ibig sabihin, based on this, the direct labor cost, only 180,000 of the manufacturing overhead is attributable to the newly constructed asset. So the rest of the 900,000 is para na sa finished goods. So based on this, the balance of your constructed asset is 680,000, whereas the finished goods is 2,520,000. Okay? So another concepts related to savings or loss on construction are still related to construction. No? So, di ba class, there's always a point of comparison kung i-construct mo yung asset or kung bibilhin mo siya na parang ready-made na. Bibilhin mo na lang siya. Now, when the actual cost of construction is less than the price at which the constructed asset can be purchased from outside parties, so the difference is not income but savings. So ano yung implication nito? So take note lang class that we do not record savings on construction. Kasi ano bang effect niya? Ang effect niya lang, it will be realized in the future periods by reason of lower depreciation charges on the asset. So ibig sabihin na good thing na nakasave ka, but we do not recognize income out of that savings on construction. What we can do, or we can only feel its effect, when we recognize already our depreciation. So this setup would be advantageous, of course, no? Parang ano siya, na ang iyong construction cost ay mas maliit compared sa kung magkano mo siya mabibili from outside party. So, just take note lang that again, savings will not be reported as income, pero you'll just eventually feel its effect, when you have smaller amounts of depreciation in the future. Okay, another still related to savings or loss. So this time naman yung loss naman in construction. So the actual cost of construction is more than the price at which the constructed asset can be purchased from outside parties. Still, the constructed asset is recorded at actual cost. So the difference naman is not loss on construction. So bakit ganito? Kasi ang rason daw is that kapag nag-construct ka ng asset, wala talagang assurance, if the same ba yung magagastos mo sa pag-construct if nagpagawa ka na lang, or I mean, if bumili ka na lang agad na ready-made na. So with that, that's why we have, again, we will not report it as a loss. No? So, ang effect na lang niya is nandoon din sa depreciation. So meaning if you have a loss on construction, so most probably ang report mo na depreciation expense shall be higher in the future na mga periods. So next is the intervening operations. Ano ba itong mga intervening operations? So these are operations that occur in connection with the construction or development of an item of PPE, but are not necessary to bring the item to the location and condition for intended use. So anong ibig sabihin nito? See, for example, you are constructing a building. Now, while hindi pa ready yung, for example, hindi pa ready yung permit, hindi pa ready yung so for the meantime, na-stop muna yung construction. So, if for example, the entity used it or para bang pinagamit nila at a fee as parking space. So, that's an intervening operation. So, merong kang income galing sa intervening operation. So, in this case, yung sa parking space nga. So, um, ang sinasabi lang dito, class, is that as regard to intervening operations, pag meron siyang income tsaka expenses, because of this incidental operations, it shall be recognized in profit or loss. So, report mo agad sa profit or loss. And then, you know, you have to recognize it as income or expense in the profit or loss. Okay? So, hindi natin pwedeng i-deduct, for example, ang income doon sa cost na supposedly na-incur during the intervening period. So, for example, meron siyang mga nakakolekta siya na ng mga parking fees. So, yung parking fees na yon or revenue from the parking space will not be deducted to the cost of the constructed asset, but rather, that amount will be reported in your profit or loss. Okay? The same also with the expenses, no? You cannot capitalize the expenses because of that intervening operations. Hindi natin pwede siya i-capitalize. So therefore, you have to report it as an expense, no, in your profit or loss statement. Okay? So another thing is the recognitions. Actually, tapos na tayo sa mga concepts, no, related to initial measurement of your asset. So let's now proceed to the recognition. So alam niyo ba kung anong ibig sabihin ng the recognition? So pag sinabi natin the recognition, class, is actually the removal of the cost and the related accumulated depreciation of PPE from the books of accounts. So in short, tanggalin na natin sa ating record. So i-recognize na natin sila. So the carrying amount of an item of PPE shall be recognized on disposal or when future economic benefits are expected from the use or disposal. So yun, no, dapat tanggalin na natin siya kapag wala ng future economic benefit na ma-expect, no, from that particular PPE. So gain or loss from the recognition of assets shall include in the profit or loss and is computed as ito, no, gain or loss is computed as your net disposal proceeds or your net proceeds minus your carrying amount. Yun. Now, for fully depreciated assets, so ano tong fully depreciated assets? So, ibig sabihin, if the asset has a useful life of 3 years, and then this time, umabot na nga siya ng 3 years din. So, fully depreciated na yung property. So, kung titingnan natin, yung balanse ng carrying amount niya ay either zero na or equivalent na siya sa residual value. So, pag fully depreciated na ang property, ano bang gagawin natin? So, the asset account and the related accumulated depreciation account are closed, or in short, tatanggalin natin, no, from our records. And the residual amount is set up in a separate account. However, when the asset is still in use after it has been fully depreciated, no? So, yung ginagamit, fully depreciated na nga siya, pero nagagamit pa. So, anong gagawin doon? So, if the asset is still in use, even after it has been fully depreciated, its amount shall not be removed from the account. So, huwag tanggalin, no, doon sa ating records ang mga asset na for those assets, no, for those assets na lampas na sa kanyang useful life. So, manang fully depreciated na siya. Pero, ginagamit pa. So, for that type of fully depreciated property which is still in use, hindi daw natin siya itatanggalin from our accounts. And also, entities are just encouraged, no, not required to disclose fully depreciated property. So, dapat meron ka lang disclosure, pero this is not, hindi naman siya required, no? Only encouraged. Okay? So, that's for the fully depreciated asset. Now, what about if a property is classified as held for sale? So, ano ba yung held for sale? So, ibig sabihin, class, hindi na, nag-iba na ang intention ng management, no, or ng entity. While noon, they are intending to use it in the production of goods and services. So, this time, gusto na lang nilang ibenta. So, anong gagawin natin? It for PPE, no, for this particular type of asset na naka-held for sale na kasi nga they intend already to sell the property, then ang sabi dito, it shall be excluded from PPE but presented separately as current assets. So tanggalin na talaga siya sa property, plant, and equipment. So it shall be measured at the lower of carrying amount or the fair value less cost of disposal. So if the fair value less cost of disposal is lower, then the difference shall be reported as impairment loss. So just take note also that kasi 'di ba itong held for sale ay you intend to sell it within the next 12 months. So since na-classify siya as held for sale, take note na you do not anymore depreciate it. So hindi na siya ide-depreciate. Another is idle or abandoned properties. Anong gagawin natin, no? What if merong mga properties or mga equipment na idle na or abandoned. Wala na siya ginagamit, no? So, take note class na for this type of asset, hindi siya dapat i-classify as held for sale kasi wala ka namang intention of selling it in the near future. Another thing is that hindi siya mako-consider as held for sale because the carrying amount shall be recovered principally through continuing use, no? So, mare-recover mo lang ang carrying amount if you are going to use it, no? So, but for idle or abandoned property, the takeaway here is that even if idle sila or abandoned sila, so you have to take note that this particular property are still depreciated unlike dun sa held for sale. Okay, so last topic would be the optional disclosures. So for this one, we have these are the things that are encouraged, no, na i-disclose ng mga entity pero hindi siya required. So first is the carrying amount of temporarily idle PPE. So para siguro, no, para malaman kung magkano ang mga idle na property, plant, and equipment. So another is the gross carrying amount of any fully depreciated PPE still in use. So still related to another type of PPE, no? Yung fully depreciated na pero ginagamit pa or yung temporary idle lang muna, no? So another thing is the carrying amount of PPE retired from the active use and classified as held for sale. So yan. So kasama rin yung plano mong ibenta na. So when cost model is used, the fair value of PPE when it is materially different from carrying amount. Okay, so ito yung mga, again, these are the items that we have to disclose, no? Although these are just optional. Hindi siya talaga requirement but only encouraged, no? Na example, tong sa number 4 or sa last item. So if the entity opted for the cost model, then you have to disclose the fair value of the PPE when it is materially different from the carrying amount. So yan, no, kasi may pagkukumparahan ka. You just have to take up no, or disclose kung magkano ang fair value ng PPE. Okay, so I think that would be it. Thank you so much for patiently listening in this discussion. So bye class. See you in the next mga videos.